So for my data protocol, I kind of made this little graphic to go along with the article that was presented about the 5 essential questions that should be asked. So I kind of typed out the 5 essential questions looking at where are we now, where do we want to be, how did we get where we are, how are we going to get where we want to be, and is what we're doing making a difference. So what I did is I kind of broke those into 3 action steps to actually make my protocol that I call assess, analyze, and act. And so the assess portion is kind of looking at that, where are we, where do we want to be? The analyze portion is kind of looking at like, how did we get here and what are we, what are we going to do to get somewhere different? And then that act portion is what we're doing making sense, and then reevaluating what that looks like. So the actual protocol that I came up with looks like this. So kind of zooming out for a second, you can see that I have the 3 sections: analyze, assess, analyze, and act. So I kind of broke this into kind of a red, yellow, green system because I feel like the assess is kind of that like stop piece, like stop and look and figure out what you have. The analyze is kind of that like, all right, we're cautiously getting ready to go. We're really like making some projections on what we could do, and then the act is actually doing it. So looking a little bit closer in the assess section, I wanted to acknowledge that every time you analyze data, it's not because something's wrong. I think a lot of times we have these data analysis meetings and we're simply looking at numbers. It doesn't mean there's an issue. So first of all, kind of just stepping out and saying, are we looking at this data because there's an issue? So is there a problem, yes or no? And then make note of that. So one example that I would have is our recent board meeting for USD 475 addressed current ACT scores for our high school. And for me, looking at this data, yes, there is a problem. There is a problem with some of the numbers on some of the testing and kind of the number of kids that are assessing in the lowest range. And so if I'm assessing ACT data, I'm going to say, yes, there is a problem. And I'm going to note, personally for me, 60% in the red and ACT is not, is a concern. I'm going to maybe note some of those percentages, note some of that data in that section. So then there's just an opportunity to reflect on what good is in the data, and then what areas of weakness is in the data. So what are we seeing that we're really positive about, and what are we saying that we're really scared or kind of nervous about some weaknesses in that data that we want to fix? And then I think that general question from the reading, is this where we want to be? So again, maybe there's not a problem. Maybe the strengths are far surpassing the weaknesses, and this maybe it is where we want to be, or it's not quite where we want to be, but we're not really seeing a glaring problem or anything like that. So this is kind of that like assess, look at what we have kind of piece. So then we move to this analyze piece, and we try to make connections. So any trends, am I seeing, again, in the ACT example, am I seeing trends between different demographics, different groups of students, different ages of students, different, based on what classes they're enrolled in, is there anything else? And that follows with this data. So if I want to try to make a trend connection with, maybe students' absences, I'm going to need more data on absences, because I think that will help me understand if kids who are in school more often are performing better on the ACT. So I can make some of those trends if I understand what other data I would like to be collecting. And then the act portion is just some action steps. So again, what are we going to do? So if it's an ACT score I'm concerned about, we are going to implement an ACT prep class. Who's going to do that? When are we going to do it? We're going to implement some ACT readiness in all the core math, science, and English classes. Who's going to do that? When is it going to get done? Things like that. So this just kind of gives you, after you've done all the thinking, to make sure there's an action. And also, really importantly, if there is an action, are you responsible for it? Personally as a teacher. So I think this is a good protocol to follow that could be helpful for my staff. I think that they would welcome this sheet. I think they would welcome some guidance in data, and I think it could be useful, in team meetings collaboratively, or even just personally as a special education teacher with lots of data. I think this could be a really personally useful sheet for me to just use as I'm sifting through my student data personally for my classroom as well.